Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Gardener's Shed podcast. And in this episode today, guys, I'm going to catch you up on how my week has gone. The main subject for this video actually is going to be the changing face of the gardening industry. So look out for that one a little bit towards the end. But like with anything, guys, there's been plenty going on this week. So let's get on with it then, shall we? So we're into this sort of winter wind down period for the business. So I work on a rolling fortnightly sort of schedule. So we have Group A one week, Group B the next week, Group A the following week, Group B the following week. So we're on to Group A customers. I've told all of them that they're either going to go to a fortnightly visit, from a fortnightly to a 4 weekly visit, or they're going to go from, the usual mow and go on a fortnightly basis to one extra cut 4 weeks from today, or their visit. There's a few properties where this is, to be fair, they're mainly Group B, where basically this will be their last visit. The garden bogs up. This will be their last visit. There is some properties in and amongst that I'll be keeping. So I've got a couple of mow and goes where I'm going to be keeping, them going probably for another 2 visits, purely because there's lots of leaves, there's lots of trees in the garden. So it's just going to be a case of once the leaves are finished, that will be it really. And then, because obviously at this point in time, we won't actually be cutting the grass. We'll be using the mower as basically a hoover to get the leaves up, and then there'll be a little bit of grass cutting amongst that. So I'll be honest with you, and this sort of contributes on towards the changing face of the garden industry chat a little bit later on. It's been amazing. I've actually had very little pushback, in terms of people. Most people have said yeah. Now, obviously, in 4 weeks' time, we're going to be on the 1st of December. So we're going to be doing a bit of grass cutting in December. Who knows what could be in 4 weeks' time? We could have snow. It could be extreme frost. So all of that work that I've booked out is in like almost a provisional sort of thing. And what I do when I do my diary, so I've mentioned this before, and I'll try and describe it as best as I can because it's audio only. I do a paper diary, so I book everybody out. I tend to do the diary a couple of months in advance. So I make sure I've got space for all of my regular customers. And because I have normally 3 full days every single week of regular customers, because of the visits. So one of the things I'll be changing next year is, instead of having some of the regular work on a Friday, some on a Tuesday, some on a Thursday, and then because it's fortnightly and 4 weekly, it sort of it doesn't cock the diary up, but it makes it a little bit messy. What I'm going to try and do next year is get every little bit of work done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So when I do my diary, Thursday, Friday is going to be free all the way down the calendar. There's going to be no, everything's going to be done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So there's no sort of gaps basically, and it just makes things easier. But when we're doing my diary now, one of the things I do is I always put, if work has got to be, this is me anyway, if I'm booking work in and I've got to speak to the customer beforehand, or if it's uncertain or whatever, I always put a square next to it. And then that reminds me on that, a couple of days before, I will call the customer to check it's okay, check if they still want it done, check if they're going to be in. It's just a visual prompt for me to book them in, basically, or to speak to them the night before. So there's a lot of squares in December. I honestly think at this time of the year, you've just got to take what you can get when it comes to this industry. It sounds a bit bad, but you literally have. You've just got to take what you can get. So there is work coming in. I've got to go and quote for another job. On one of my commercial properties, I was talking to the chap, the big boss, and it's weird because whenever I send the invoice, I'm guessing that company, the guy that I deal with, whether he's left or whatever, but I've noticed it's the same email address, but it goes through to a different person, and that's been done like 3 times now. And weirdly enough, I've never ever had anybody message back and say, "Who's this?" They just pay the invoice. But I do know the big boss, and he actually had a chat with me the other day, and it was quite a good one because it's just a grass cut I do there, and he says to us, "Well, how often are you cutting grass at this time of the year?" I says to him, "Well, it's done on a fortnightly." He says, "Oh, could you do it instead of doing the grass because that's slowed down? Could you just keep an eye on the place basically?" So that's meant that instead of me finishing there, it's actually me carrying on there. So that's quite good. And oddly enough, it doesn't take me actually that long to do the actual grass anyway, and it's been priced very well if I'm being honest with you. So I can sort of keep an eye on the whole place opposed to letting it, grow out over the winter period. And he's actually bought a new place. He was saying that just up the road from me, they bought a new place. So hopefully, and he says we'll get you to do that as well. So hopefully, if that goes well and they accept the price, it could mean that. So I do that job and another job on the same day, and it's a good day. And I'll be honest with you, it's one of them where I've told people what it is, and they're like, "That's really really good." And it's one of them where if I said it on here and I said it on YouTube, it would give a false, sort of scale to my business, in the sense that people might think he's on that every day or he's making it up. I aren't, and I aren't. This is just 2 unicorn jobs that have lined up basically, especially when you look at what I get and how long I actually do the job. But if this other job comes off and it's, it could mean potentially that I could book all 3 of these jobs out on the same day. Yes, I do it on a Sunday, but it means that I've got, a really, really good day. And I always say this, your gardening money, what you earn every day, that's like your bread and butter money. That's where you put it. So lately I've been making sure that I'm putting away for winter. So I'm like, right, I want to put half the winter money away this month or quarter of the winter money this month. And every little money I've been getting, so it's like, right, the first 2 weeks I need X amount. So if I get baxed 40 quid, I'm putting 40 quid into this pot, and it's amazing how quickly but also how slowly these little bits of money add up in terms of if you're trying to reach £1,000, £2,000. But these big amounts like the hedge cuts, the gutter jobs, the commercial visits, it's a chunk, it's a big bite at a time. So this is why I think it's healthy and good to have a mix of jobs basically, instead of having just loads and loads and loads of little Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs. I think sometimes you want, the golden bears, whatever they are, you want them big bowls of porridge basically. So hopefully that will work out quite well, because what I want to do next year is get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I want to compress all of that work into 3 days basically. So I'm going to get like 4 days of work done in 3 days. And then the idea is that if it is that we have a rain day, I can do the work on a Thursday or a Friday. But then it means that I've got work, I've got that Thursday free where I can book in extra jobs or other stuff. And then the Friday, I can either fill it with an extra job or I can take it off. Shoot off in a camper van Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, Friday and Saturday, and then come back on a Sunday and, chill out on a Sunday, opposed to coming back Monday morning or Sunday night and rushing on like a headless chicken. Another thing that I've been doing this, and I've just started doing it and it's worked out really, really well, is, so with having the 4-track, I've set that up as, basically, I always call it, I always overthink things and, not overcomplicate, but a bit grandiose. I call it the rapid response vehicle. It's the SGM rapid response vehicle. And I think it's with watching Thunderbirds when I was younger, where Thunderbird 2, they had the different pods for, for the that go into the Thunderbird 2. And I've sort of carried that over in the van, in terms of different layouts and different options. It's like the van's configurable. Over time, the van's been a van for everything, basically. Everything gets shoved in it, but now we're having a trailer and getting a trailer how I wanted it to, with the high sides and the top that's permanently mounted, and it's got a permanent, it's I really, really do like my little dinky trailer. I must admit, it's proving to be a very, very useful asset to the business. And that's another option where, if I've got hedge cuts or rubbish removal or, loads of clippings, that's set up for that. I can fill it with mulch, I can fill it with this, can fill it with that. Same with the back of the van, it's set up perfectly. And the thing is, I was thinking about getting a bigger van, but I think it'd be a detrimental thing to my business, if I'm being honest with you. Because all of this year I've used one mower, obviously my handheld tools, and that's it really. Last year I used to carry, well, even into this year to be fair, I used to carry, the big still mower and a small still roller mower. Now I just use the Artesia and it just flies through everything. It's not missed a beat. Other than self-inflicted injuries, it's not missed a beat all year really. So I'm really, really happy with it. But with having the 4-track, that's like another little sort of addition to the old Thunderbird 2 mentality, where I've just got the gutter clearing stuff in it. Everything's in there that I need to gutter clear. And it's been brilliant. It's like today I've just done a full day of gutter clearing. I could just jump straight in it, go and do it, and then park it back up, get back in my van, and then I can go and do the gardening tomorrow. I don't have to swap things around. I don't have to. The amount of times, especially early on in the gutter clearing season, the amount of times I've forgotten something or, put the stuff in and realised I needed something else. It's just having everything in the 4-track is really, really useful. And it's been a really, really good addition to the business so far. And as well, I use it for personal as well. So instead of taking my business everywhere with me, taking all my gardening stuff shopping or anything like that, or to the cinema, I can take the 4-track. And if people look in the back and they see a Hoover and, a big blue bag, well, what are they going to do really? They're going to be hard up if they're nicking some nearly knackered gutter poles and on its last legs gutter back. But I did make a big deal about promoting additional services a few years ago. But I do think the gutter clearing is a good little add-on. And I think people look at doing it and they see the cost of it. And it is an expensive add-on, but it's a very lucrative add-on. But my advice to you is I've got the big 2.5 grand Skyvac industrial machine with 3 motors and caster wheels and an aluminium drum and all that. But I'll be honest with you, all this gutter season I've took with me the little Atom, which is a little thing, and it's absolutely brilliant. I can lift it up with one hand in and out the back of the van. It's brilliant. I don't have to worry about the customer's electric tripping or getting hot. The amount of times I've gone to people and they're like, oh yeah, plug it in the garage, and you can just see they run some like 3-core cable that's not rated for a garage basically, and they've got like the washing machine, the dryer, the fridge freezer plugged into extensions, and they're like, oh, could you plug in? You're like, but the little Atom, it's brilliant. And this isn't a plug for Skyvac at all. There's other companies, GVS do their own version of it. But yeah, don't sleep on the little things. And if somebody was to say to me, what's the machine that's made me the most money? Obviously, lawnmowers have, but I've had that many different mowers, it's unfair to say a lawnmower. But I've had one Skyvac Mini Atom thing. I would say that tool itself has made me the most money in running my business. So I've just spent a little bit of money on the gutter clearing stuff, and this is the thing. What I've noticed is when you see these things that come out, like I've just bought a cuff that means that instead of like the cable getting tangled up, you can buy this and it should stop that from happening. And that's one of the things that's been driving me up the wall. And then the attachments for it, I tend to make my own, but there's been one that they bought out and I thought, that's a really good idea. And it's a direct upgrade. So that's one of the things I like about it. So I won't bang on any more about the exterior cleaning, but as I said, it's been good so far, and I'd say it's probably been the best year. Well, not the best year for it, but it's been working out. I've booked out 3 full days of exterior cleaning. I'm doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it's 3 days continuous. And I'll be honest with you, when I look at what I can earn from it, if you can get this cracked as an industry, it can be a really, really good industry. I don't know of many companies that just do gutter clearing, but when I look at booking the 3 days out, it's blooming good money. So the Facebooks have been working. I'll be honest with you, I've been on a little bit of a content spree. I hate saying it. Am I turning into a content creator? Who knows? But I am looking for opportunities. I am looking for things that'll make a good Facebook post. This will make a good Facebook post. And it's not so much for the YouTubes. It's more so for sharing it to community groups. You want people where you want your post to grab people's attention as quickly as possible. And the gutters, I'll be honest with you, does do a good job of it. It does do a good job of grabbing people because they can see it, and it's one of those like ASMR, satisfying things where you can see it being sucked up, and always just missed a bit. Oh no, he's gone and got that bit, and so I'm thinking about how can I sort of put out a little bit. Basically, I want to make the content that I put out on social media that little bit more interesting. And I've got a pot of them. I'm looking at them now. Actually, I'm going to put them in my bag. But I've got a pot of stick-on googly eyes, and I'm thinking of just putting a couple of them on the end of the hose as I'm vacuuming the gutters out, just to give a little bit of character. And it's just okay. You don't want to do that for every post because you look like some Mickey Mouse operation, but it's just something that's that little bit interesting. It's something that somebody will see and it'll grab them, and that's what it's all about. I have had I would say I've had good luck for me in terms of what I've put into Facebook over the years, but I've been posting so I've not posted last week, but I've posted 3 or 4 times now, and 3 or 4 times that I've posted, I've gotten work from it. I've either gotten leads or I've gotten inquiries. So it does work, Facebook does, it really does. I have changed my mind on it. Don't get me wrong, there's like jokers out there and people who just want prices. But if I can wade through that, I think it could be really, really good. And that's one of the things I'm going to be doing for next season as well, is keeping on sharing the gutters, the gutters. Next season, it's all going to be about the mow and goes, sharing that. So I'm going to try, and I am quite lucky in terms of I've filmed over the years. I've filmed plenty of like YouTube shorts and other little sort of content, where I can just sort of reuse it and re-edit it for like my Facebook ads and stuff like that. But I'm not saying it's the future of this industry, but as physical print's dying out, and the fact is that I do believe no matter what point your business is going, I think you should always be advertising, whether it's a big way or a small way. They always say, I think 5 or 3 customers can change the shape of your business. In my experience, 1 person can shape your business. So I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I had another house clearance come through, so that's on a bit of a rush actually. It's been put to me. It's basically try and get it done as quickly as possible. So as such, I am having to sort of scrabble and move things around. But if it comes off and I can get it within the price that I've set out, I'm going to be a happy little bunny, if I'm being honest with you. So that's going to be a little bit of extra money, and what that's going to be used for, I'll be honest with you, and this is what I said at the very start, I like to put aside these big amounts that come in, especially the house clearances. They normally come in as one lump sum, so I'll drop one invoice at the end of the month and then they'll get paid. so it's normally a big sum coming in. I tend to use them big sums for like either, you know, paying off something, or normally what I do is put it forward. So I normally put it into the winter pot. As much as it pains me, the next one is going to be my tax pot. Put that into the tax pot, and then that's, you know, it's just chipping away at that. Never ever ever stop paying into the tax pot. Never take your eye off it, because if it is that you do, and you think it won't be as much as you think it will, it'll be more than what you think it will be, and then you're like, oh great. But the tax is sorted for this year anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. But it's always at the back of my mind basically to keep putting away for it. So this episode, I did say at the start, it's about the changing face of the gardening industry. And I've noticed changes. I've noticed people's attitudes have changed. I think there's two ways of looking at it. So this year I've said to myself, I've said this plenty of times on the channel, there has been a big thing that I've noticed with my customers is there's customers that last year never caused a problem. Suddenly this year they're causing a problem. And then the flip side of that is that, you know, there's customers last year that were always causing problems. Well, not problems enough to get rid of them, but they were all, you know, they were first to cancel, or, you know, rain, or don't come, it's raining, all this sort of stuff. This year they've left me to it, and I know why for some of them, and I think it's because they've just got more things on the mind basically, which further hits home to me that tightness is a personality trait, because the tight ones are still tight no matter what they go through. But the people that, you know, have got more time to worry about things, so they've got, you know, they just worry about things, or they interfere with things. It doesn't take much for them to shift focus basically. So another thing that I've noticed is that the season is later this time around, and actually people are understanding it more. So I've had customers, they're like, oh yeah, well the grass is growing later, you know, yeah, you know, you basically keep cutting it till it's finished, and I've never had that before. Normally people are like, oh, it's September, it's done now. I did have I've talked about it in a YouTube video. I don't know when it'll be up yet, but I had to have a rant. I had an interaction with a customer's cleaner the other day, where she was, and this is in her eyes, she was only giving her opinion, but her opinion was that gardeners can't work in the winter. There's no work for them to do, because in her garden she doesn't garden, so as such there's nothing to do in anybody else's garden. Basically it's a version of that. So I've talked about that. I got it off my chest basically because it really wound me up, and that was like Monday morning first job, and it you know, just it just winds me up. I just think sometimes, and I said to her, I says, look, you're probably thinking you're helping a customer, but it's only the same as me coming to this customer and saying, oh, your house is lovely and tidy, I don't think you need a weekly cleaner, I think you get away with once every 2 or 3 weeks, you know, that'll stuff you up. And she says, no it won't, I don't see the difference, I can clean all year round, you cannot garden all year round. So anyway, so I do think the industry's changing. I think one of the things I've noticed is there's more people cottoning on, or noticing, or realising that if you pay peanuts you get monkeys. I've noticed this season where there has been a shift in it. There's been a shift in people. I've had very, very little, and this is, you can tell this because I've not talked about it on YouTube. I've had very, very, very few people, I don't think I've had anybody this year that just wants the cheapest, that just wants it knocking down. In all fairness, that could be skewed because I did very little sort of, the advertising I've done throughout the year is where people, they've had to make the call for action. And then even the Facebook sort of stuff, they've had to decide to message me. And primarily the gutters, I've noticed it's, people never seem to haggle the price or argue the price, because it's something that they can't physically do themselves. They don't mind paying that premium, or they don't mind paying my price, let's just say. But as I said, this season I've had very, very few sort of race to the bottom customers, not like in previous years. So the season's changing. I do think people's mentalities are changing. I had an interesting comment, and I can't remember the chap's name. And I think I mentioned AI in one of the videos, and I don't think the direct effect of AI will affect our industry in terms of, I don't think there's going to be machines to replace us. I think we're always going to have, or people are always going to prefer the personal touch, let's just say. Even at Groundsfest, I did see there was a machine, it was a mower, and it had a strimmer attachment as well, and it was a robot mower. So it was like, it could go around, and it worked out where your trees were, and it could trim round them, it could trim your fence line, and then it can mow the lawn for you. Even machines like that, it'll never sort of replace us. But I think, and this commenter on the YouTube video, he pointed out that it's not so much the AI, it's, because AI is going to make, one of the things I've noticed on my phone is that if you select text, if you write a big message out on notes, you can highlight it, and then you can get AI to optimize it or rewrite it. And I'm not very good at putting words to paper or words to iPhone, but this thing actually smooths it out, and it's amazing in a way, it really is. And maybe by using it, I'm making it worse. But again, it's, I think AI is going to, it's not, and I think as well, if it's, bigger companies can, use AI to sort of, like phone lines or something, I don't know really. But I think it's the blowback. I think it's when all of these people and, the AI, jobs where people, they could be automated out. It's like people are taking AI for granted now and using it to make, stupid videos and deep fakes and all that sort of stuff. But I do think it's going to knacker so many industries up. In China, they've got autonomous taxis. I don't know if they're trialling or they've approved it, but they've got like autonomous lorry drivers. So for moving stuff around, it's going to be nobody else. And that's interesting because lorry drivers are capped to a certain amount of hours. Will that be the same, for AI? Probably not. It's probably go all day. But, there's going to be taxi drivers out of a job. I think it's going to be interesting what the world will look like in 25, 30, 55, 50 years. It's going to be very interesting. But I think the immediate is all these people that are out of jobs. What are they going to do? Are they going to pick up paintbrushes and be decorators? Are they going to pick up mowers and become gardeners? I'm hoping that if it goes the way I'd like it to, is where people can see the difference between a professional gardener and a job and knocker gardener. Don't get me wrong, there's always a market. And I actually have got no beef with job and knocker gardeners at all. I think they do a vital job in terms of they work for the people that just want the cheapest. And that's not the customer I want to work for. So I am quite happy that in my area there is people hoovering up this cheap work, because I don't want it and I don't want to be kept contacted for this cheap work. I'd rather it go to somebody else who works at a cheap rate. But, with all this work, is it going to be that more people are reaching for it? I don't know. I really don't know. Another thing as well they've teased about it, and remember, they were teasing years and years ago about this Make Tax Digital. Now that's sort of been slipped in. They're on about bringing the VAT threshold down. So, I'm sure they've said it's like 30 grand. Now, again, I think next year is going to be an interesting one when this Make Tax Digital properly lands, to see how people handle it, or the industry handles it. But if we do this VAT threshold thing, wow, I think that's going to be another massive shake-up. I actually don't think it'll be as bad. Now, I'm not sticking up for it, and personally I don't want it. I am like, I've not been diagnosed, but you know what I mean, like Mr. Autism here. I don't like change. I like everything the same. I like everything the same. I don't want change, but this Make Tax Digital was a change. I've managed to adapt to that. This VAT thing, well, I've always said this: if you've got to do it, you've got to do it. And if they bring it in at 30 grand turnover, not profit, well, I reckon that's every single professional gardener is going to be VAT registered. Unless you're in your first few years, I reckon most gardeners are turning over 30 grand. And I think that will be good and that will be bad in air quotes. I think it will be good in the sense that everybody will have to charge the extra 20%. So automatically, every single professional gardener in the area, in the country, will have to put their prices up to an extent. Now, if that did come in for me, what would I do? I'd put my price at 25%. If the thing was 20%, I'd put it up 25. Because if you put it up 20 to pay the VAT, and then next season, how are you then going to get a price increase? You've already put it up 20%. I'd rather give customers that big slog. So if a customer pays me 20 quid for grass, it's going to be 25. You get what I mean. If it's 40 quid, it's going to be 40. You get what I mean. I'm not good at maths on the spot, but you get what I mean. It's going to be where there's going to be a price increase. I would rather jump ahead of it and future-proof myself by putting it up by the 25% or 22.5%, whatever. I'd rather sort of future-proof myself. And another thing as well, you will lose customers by it. I think customers will be very short-sighted if they do. If you say to the customer that, look, due to this VAT increase, VAT price, whatever, VAT threshold being brought down, odds on every professional gardener will have to pay it to some extent. And the people who aren't are just shooting themselves in the foot, because I think even if you were just starting your business and you're under that VAT threshold, I would say everybody in the country will have to put their prices up, because if you're under that VAT threshold, next year you'll be over it, and then suddenly for Mr. and Mrs. residential customer, you've then got to put the 20% up. And if you're then worried about doing it, if you're worried about doing it when they first talk about it or they first bring it in, you're under it, you've then got to do it retrospectively, and then you've then got to factor in a price increase. So I think if they do it, it's going to be a massive thing for the industry, and a massive thing for the customer base. Potentially customers are going to be paying, like I said, a £20 cut will be £25. So it's going to be a big increase, really. It's going to be, well, £24, but you get what I mean. It's going to be a big price increase. Obviously, the big commercial companies or commercial clients that I've got, they won't be affected. It's fine for them. It's all hunky-dory. But it is going to be a thing. But I think what will happen is, I think if they do this, and I think you'll see more people coming into the gardening industry flying under the radar. These job and knocker types. But I honestly think with how the country's going and how hot on they're trying to make it, I think it won't be long before, everybody has to go legit, or everybody has to do it, because I think they'll do it in such a way where and I see guys in my area, and I'm never one to canty custard, but I know people that are flying under the radar. I know gardeners in my area that are claiming, and they're working. One of my golden rules is I don't get involved in other people's stuff, and they will catch them, they will get them eventually. And I think if they do this, I think the rise of the job and knocker will be a good one. They're going to get the pick of the work, and they're going to get loads of people who have had gardeners going, oh, they put the prices up by 20%. I can't afford that. I want to pay. So you're going to see more of it, but I think eventually it will peter out where everybody has to charge the price. Everybody has to charge it. I do shudder to think, if they do bring this in, what it will be like. it'll be one. But then I think sometimes if they bring it in, or big changes, you've just got to do it. There's no two ways about it. If somebody said to me, right, you've registered next year, I can't get out of it. If they bring it down and it's the 30 grand, everybody's going to be in the same boat, so everybody's going to have to do it. So it's going to be very interesting, really. I do think, I don't like to talk about politics, but I do feel comfortable just by referring to it as the country's changing. I do think things are changing, I really, really do. Everything's different. It's one of the things I'm doing next season is I'm moving away from cash. I've got very, very few customers that sort of pay with cash. And I had a message off I think it's Barclays who I bank with. They messaged to say that you can no longer pay cheques in at the post office through them. It's all got to be done through the app, or is it Lloyd's? It's one of them. You can't pay cheques in anymore. So I am quite lucky in the sense that I don't take cheques anyway. But another thing as well is, cash, you can only pay 10 grand in through the post office. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's less than £1,000 a month. And, it doesn't take long to hit that, let's just say. For a business my size, it doesn't take long to hit that. And then suddenly, what do you do with that extra? You then got to drive to somewhere else to pay it in, or you've got to make a purposeful trip to pay it in, or you sort of let it mount up and then put it in. But for me, I would much rather have, and again, going back to the very start of this conversation, the £40, £30, £20 that are coming in, it mounts up. It doesn't mount up quickly, but it mounts up quickly. And if someone's paying, if I have a couple £100 in cash, every other week, and I have to wait to, it's like I pay my cash in at the post office, but they've got crazy opening hours now. It's like half a day one day, close another day, and I can never remember when they're open. There's like one I think it's a Thursday that they're closed, or Tuesday. I can never properly remember when it is. And then there's been times when they do a half day, I've turned up and they've been shut. And then after 4 o'clock, you can only pay in over 400, but you can't pay in over £400 or something like that. And it just gets where it doesn't work in with my lifestyle, so to speak. I'm making this purposeful trip, and then I've got £200 sitting in the van, or £300. I'm like, oh, great. In reality, I would much rather have had that hit my bank account that little bit quicker. I've talked in the past about, investing into different things where you can see your money and, stuff like that. But I think sometimes the cash is the worst thing to have on hand. I think if you're just stuffing cash under a mattress, it's the worst thing you can do. At least, for me, having it all paid through the bank, it's simpler. It's simpler for me, if I'm being honest with you. It's completing that paper trail. You're showing what's coming in, what's coming out. As well, there's not a great deal you can do with, cash. Nearly everything that I do is paid through, a bank card or a credit card. It's very rare that I'll take cash out with me anyway. So the more I have coming in through the bank, the better it is for me and the quicker it is. So I'm going to be making a change. And even if I have to, I've spoke to my customer, well, I will be speaking to them at the end. So the cash paying customers, I'll be saying to them, have you got facilities for backs? Don't get me wrong, some of my customers, I've worked for them for such a long time that they started paying with cash, and then it's kept on paying with cash, because that's, when I first started, I didn't do much online banking, or I did, but I didn't do much, or, most of it's like legacy stuff. So I'm going to say to them, are you okay to pay by backs? And if they say, well, Luke, and I have got a few customers actually that don't trust online banking at all, so I'll say to them, that's no problem at all, I'll pay it in through the card machine. Now, yeah, I'll be paying like 0.75% on that, but it's hitting my bank within 3 days. It's not mounting up in in my purse when I'm, and waiting for me to go to the bloody cash machine with it or something, the post office. So yeah, there is some big changes coming for my business next season, and that's one of them. And another thing as well, I think there's going to be changes for the industry. I really, really do. I think this Make Tax Digital is going to trip a lot of people up, unfortunately. Uh, I've still not gotten my head around it. I'm doing me little Zoho books every single day. I must admit, though, I'm not trying to bag on anything, For me, if you have to do it, you have to do it. You can have an opinion on it, but you can't change it. If government says you got to do Make Tax Digital, you got to do it. I'm not a fan of it, but for me, I try and see the positives in everything, and I have found actually that this Make Tax Digital has made me more organised. It's helping me to see, you know, the customers, the good customers from the bad customers. It's helping me to sort of see, and what I mean by that is there's been customers where I'm thinking to myself, oh God, a nightmare, but it's that £25 and it's easy, or it's that X amount and it's easy work, or it's only, it's this little bit every fortnight. But then with Zoho, you can type in the name of them and you can search and it'll tell you exactly how much that customer's bought in for that year. And I think to myself, wow, I've made 220 quid off them this year. Is it worth it? It's just silly things like that. It really is. So I'm going to leave this episode here now, guys. We've got to that, round about that 40-minute mark. So, like I said, let me know if you think there's going to be changes to the industry. Are they going to be positive? As I said, I don't want to go on to politics and stuff, but we can see why they're doing it, can't we? I think they're going after the wrong people, if I'm being honest with you. But, well, it is what it is, isn't it? Like I said, if you can't do anything about it, you've got to accept it and adapt to it. And that's what I've done. That's what I'm going to try and do, and that's what I'm going to keep trying to do, is just basically whatever comes my way, we just get on with it, basically. I don't think I'll ever change my sort of standing when it comes to how I look at this industry. I do love, and I always refer to it as my job, and I shouldn't do, but what I mean by I love my job is I love working for my business. I love being, the company director, but I love being a dog's body. I love, sorting this stuff out. I love putting these fires out. I love, lumping, stuff into a skip. I love servicing my equipment, but then I enjoy, and I love what it gives me back, where, this business is paid for my camper van, which, over winter I can go out and enjoy it. This year I've had so many trips away. I'll have to post a picture of it one day, but inside the camper van, it's on my personal Facebook page, I think. I've got a metal board, and I had to buy another one. So wherever I've been this year, if I can get a fridge magnet for, I have. And I've filled this massive board in a camper van just with fridge magnets. And it's only been a year, and there's like 50 different magnets, 50 different places, 50 different experiences, 50 different memories. Don't get me wrong, when I look at the board, there's been some good memories with good people, and there's been some bad memories with bad people, let's just say. But overall, I wouldn't change it for the world. And what I'm going to do at the end of the season, end of my, camper van season, so at the end of the year, I'm going to take all those, happy memories down, put them in a box, put them in a container, and I'm going to start again next year. And I'm going to make another, fridge magnet wall of fresh memories the following season. And I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can. And ultimately, the gardening, the house clearances, it's like this latest house clearance. It's vile. It's so horrible. It's disgusting. It's like OAP upside down Stranger Things. There's mushrooms growing out the walls. It's vile. Have you ever known a bed base to rot? Like literally rot away. You pick it up and the bed base just gives away in your hand. It's vile. It's absolutely horrible. But it's work, and it's good work, and it's good money, and it's honest. And I think sometimes you've got to sort of, do these horrible jobs. But for me, how I look at it is, That's my winter money. That's my tax money. That's me upgrade to the camper van money. This is giving me, where I've now got, an extra month, an extra 2 weeks of money to live off over winter. How I'm looking at this winter is if I can put what I want to put away when I get to when I break up on roughly halfway through December is when I break up. I should have the money in my account, which I can then say to myself, right, I can either work for I can either work all winter and then try not to touch it, or if I had to and I couldn't work, I can have winter off. And for me, that's a very, very nice place to be in. Don't get me wrong, I've got work that's booked in. I've got work that will sort of keep the coffers topped up, so to speak. But I have got that choice. I have got that option. And that's what this business provides. And this is why I always say your business does come first. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing that I can't change or move around. If my mate rung me up and said, Sam, I need your hand, I could drop whatever I need to do to help him. Just the same as if a loved one need a lift to the hospital. Anything. There's no job that I do that can't be put off to another day. But I can't do that every day, and I can't take that for granted, because it is the business that pays for things, and that's how I look at it. So, as usual, guys, and I'll finish now. Have a good day. Keep on gardening.